The United States of America has fallen. We are the only remnants of the Republic. As the Soviets won the Cold War and Ronald Reagan dissolved the USA, several communist scums and other states rose up and seized power over their respective areas. Luckily, Reagan's vice president, George Bush, seized control over the southern states and Washington, D.C., ordering all loyal patriots to flee south. While we have successfully held the communists out of the south, our economy is stagnant and unproductive. And with an upcoming controversial presidential election, our future is uncertain. The only thing we are sure won't hurt is to continue support our military. With only 150k men, it will have to be upgraded a lot before we can think about uniting all of the USA. Our current president, Donald Rumsfeld, will run for re-election, but his own party is beginning to doubt him. Jeb Bush has already won over a big part of the Republican Party, and the primaries surprisingly ended up in a stalemate between the two. This means other parties have bigger chances to win this election, like the Independence Union with their nominee Robert Bentley, or the even smaller National Revival Party with David Duke, one of the most popular radical parties which won 9% 8 years ago. But extremism is rising in our nation, so they still have a worryingly big chance to win. This election will turn more violent than almost any other, especially since the Republicans are so divided. Riots and protests have already started spreading throughout the nation, and soon the election arrived. The Republican Party was split, and despite the strong support for the independent movement, the people has decided that we need a stronger president. The fascist David Duke has gotten 32% of the vote, the biggest of all his opponents. As soon as he entered office, he met massive resistance from the 68% of the population who hadn't voted on him. Jeb Bush and Donald Rumsfeld immediately united again to take advantage of the situation, and as the congressional election arrived a month later, they managed to maintain the majority in the Congress. This meant Duke is unable to drive his ideas through Congress and do his job. As the situation deteriorated even more, the conflicts on the street are continuing to escalate. Order must be restored, someone help. And help arrived from the military. The only stable organization left couped the government and established a temporary military dictatorship. With the collapse of the National Revival Party, several new organizations have risen up from its ashes. One such group, known as the Washington Cult, is growing in popularity. Their goal is to create an American monarchy under the descendants of the last true president of the people, George Washington. As their popularity grows, even parts of the military junta are supporting them, and with continued violence on the street, the junta finally caved in and allowed Paul I to be fully coronated as the King of America. To turn the country more stable and not to risk a Republican uprising, we must work with the Congress. The monarchy will listen to the people and work tirelessly to improve their lives. While all this crazy stuff had been happening, a terror attack shook the independent nation of Texas. Republican terrorists killed several Texas senators in the goal of destroying the nation and allowing us to annex them. It failed, but the Texan question has been risen. Should we absorb the state or grant them autonomy as a satellite republic? While the question is pressing, the king first has to stabilize our own country. So we formed the Council of Princes, an administrative body that will lay the groundworks of total unification, but also represent each state and report directly to the monarch. Ever since our independence from the British monarchy, our people have seen monarchy as the one thing Washington fought against. This is simply not true. Monarchy has and will bring us the glory that has slipped out of our hands. Great news! The American People's Commonwealth have, as all communists, fallen to infighting. Sadly, our army and economy isn't prepared for any intervention, but this will weaken them before our future war. But while we thought the civil war would be long and bloody, the uprising against Chomsky was swiftly crushed by his loyalists. Either way, the situation on the streets are calming down as our monarch is growing more legitimate every day. Still, our economy is absolutely horrendous. Royal investments will help some, but more longer-term solutions will also be prepared. Seeing how strong the American People's Commonwealth, now Federation of American Syndicalists, army was, we must improve ours. So we will reform the US Army and turn it into an army worth our king. The Royal American Army has been established. Finally, we can end this turmoil. David Duke and the military takeover are forgotten. The only thing that matters is the future of our glorious American monarchy. With stability back, we can finally answer the Texan question. The idea of a Texan republic is stupid. Texas has always and will always be a state of the USA. A Texan ambassador met with our king and we proposed that they joined us. Without thinking about it, they utterly refused and declared a state of war. While their army is small, the risk of Texan terror attacks is huge. We must immediately ensure CIA loyalty and that they swear their allegiance to the king so they can be trusted with their work against the terrorists. Only in the first days of the war we had managed to encircle Houston, and after some fighting in the city we captured its 12K garrison. Meanwhile in the east the Texan army suffered massive problems with mobilization. With no defense of Austin we could easily capture their second biggest city and continue to the east. Soon we had arrived all the way to El Paso and Las Cruces. The Texan army in complete disarray and their politicians already having fled to Mexico or the American Reclamation Authority surrendered. Their army is destroyed, but their people are still loyal to Texas and not us. We must remind them of what they really are and destroy the legacy of their free country. The first and most important matter being their flag. Some think we should let only the civilians keep them, others want the flag to be used by the local government too. But despite the drop in stability, we must get rid of it completely. Our own flag will replace it. Now on to the structure of the state. As it joins our kingdom, we will divide it and assign different princes to each region. This will keep them disunited and unable to rise up against us. But we don't want to go too far. The Texan Senate will simply be turned into their new legislative assembly instead of being totally dissolved. After all of this and no major Texan terrorist attacks, it seems we have fixed the Texan question and their people can be fully integrated. All this time, especially after we became a kingdom, international recognition of our state has been minimal. But having shown the world our determination to unite the US in Texas, we can begin to push for international recognition. While the Soviets and most other communist nations definitely won't recognize us and instead support the communists on the West Coast, there are still a few monarchies left in the world that will support us. With their help, we will challenge the supremacy of communism. While the king holds a lot of power, there are still the disloyal Republicans in Congress. Having shown the people that we are better than them through integrating Texas and slowly improving our economy, we can finally destroy their party. To fill the void, a new party formed. Under the leadership of Barack Obama, the Federalist Party pledged to uphold the monarchy and unite USA under its banner. But they differ from the Washington cult since they want to turn us into a constitutional monarchy. And they are right, Washington's dream wasn't a dictatorship, and now that things have calmed down we can return to democracy. We will elect a prime minister under the king. As election day showed up, the new Federalist Party and Obama soared in popularity. Most old Republicans and independence unionists voted for him and he managed to win a slim majority. Barack Obama is the first prime minister under the king and his centrist policies will bring us to glory. With democracy back and the world a bit closer, we can showcase our stability. Investments are now rolling in, especially from monarchists and democratic countries. Our economy has started to boom, the riches of our country are returning. This means we can begin to prepare for complete unification. While we did create the Council of Princes, all states outside of our control don't have any. So we will crown them to justify our invasion and to facilitate integration. We can now start to prepare our military to face the threat of communism and destroy them first. And we have to hurry. The Union of American People's Republic have slowly started to march to the east. Since the creation of the Royal American Army, we have largely improved our division templates. Probably the strongest motorized divisions on the continent have been created, and in Washington, the encircled city, we have deployed 2 Royal Guards. But our industry is holding us back. We are still in a deficit of armored personnel carriers. Luckily, we have enough guns to fill one army with normal infantry divisions. The Western Communists have already captured Idaho and Arizona. It is time for Operation Free Princess. But we are surrounded by strong enemies. If we attack the American Reclamation Authority, we will have a border with the Western Communists and they'll crush us together with the Eastern. Our only option is to attack the Great Lakes Republic with its mutual defense agreement with the Federation of American Syndicates. The syndicalists have formed a global alliance with like-minded nations, but they are probably too far away to help them. The risk is worth taking, or else we're done for. The plan is to defend against the syndicalists while we drive north through the Great Lakes Republic with our motorized. After that we will surprise the syndicates and capture Chicago. The surprise element is all we have, we must use it immediately. We declared war on the Great Lakes and began our drive. Springfield, East Kansas City and St. Louis all got captured in the first few days. None of their divisions were there to defend the cities. We encountered them first in the south of Iowa, but not many of them, and as they began to confront some of our motorized, the rest could continue and encircle them. We managed to encircle 2 of their divisions and destroy them without resistance. 362 of our men died in the contrast to 13,000 of theirs. With their biggest city captured and army humiliated, they are already 74% towards capitulation. Minneapolis and maybe St. Paul might be enough to force them to surrender. They had divisions in the area this time around, but they still tried to counterattack us, destroying their small but significant entrenchment. This meant our quick divisions could easily break through and continue north. After only a few days or even hours, we had arrived in the 2 cities and showed our complete superiority over the Great Lakes. Their whole army surrendered and their government fled into Chicago, and our own road into the city is open, or at least we thought. They had noticed our plans and 3 divisions were in the city to defend it. But the city sticks out to the west and borders one of the Great Lakes. So, with no divisions in the southeast of it, we managed to quickly encircle it, and despite them deploying reinforcements, we captured it and destroyed their divisions. Meanwhile, in Washington, we had managed to hold off their first wave, but had big trouble defending their second. With only 9 organizations left, we decided to retreat from the city in the hopes of soon returning. Luckily, the evacuation was successful. Back to the east, their defenses are still weak, and we have the perfect chance to encircle Indianapolis. At first, we quickly advanced and had soon captured Dayton, but as we tried to cross the Ohio River, we failed. Partially due to syndicalist allies beginning to arrive from Portugal and Yugoslavia. And with their allies supporting their defense, they could counterattack our weak flanks and manage to encircle and capture one of our motorized. While we did manage to capture Indianapolis, we were forced to retreat to more defensible terrain and abandon the city. With their allies reinforcing them, we too need more divisions. We will start to train some despite our lack of anti-air. So, to get a better industry, we will begin to integrate the Great Lakes Republic and their territories. Our blitzing maneuvers had failed. Instead, we will try slow and steady progress with the Royal Guards from Washington in the goal of seizing Evansville and its airport. The localized offensive was a great success, and we managed to cross the Ohio River and force their planes to a more northern airport in Michigan. So we decided to continue with our Royal Guards, and after encircling and capturing one division, we successfully re-entered Indianapolis and encircled another two. During this offensive, disaster struck at home. Paul I had died, and his son Richard Washington has declined the position of king. This meant the Council of Princes had the right to choose our next monarch. The debate was fierce, but after 20 days it was chosen that Paul I's second son would succeed him, the true heir of the throne. Meanwhile, on the battlefield, we had managed to halt the syndicalist attack in northern Michigan, but to kick them back down from there would be difficult. So instead, we used our motorized to overwhelm their divisions in Michigan and drive all the way to Detroit and the Canadian border. This meant all of Michigan was encircled and we could slowly march up north, destroying their massive army in the Michigan Peninsula. So we can turn back south and destroy the syndicalists once and for all. And we have to hurry back down since they have managed to take back Detroit and Indianapolis. After we captured New York, the syndicalists surrendered and the whole East Coast is under our control. In the peace treaty with their allies, we also managed to get Greenland and a big amount of influence in Liberia. While we had fought them, the Union of American People's Republic had arrived to our border, and right now they are destroying what little is left of the American Reclamation Authority. We will immediately move our divisions to the border, but some will have to stay. We don't have enough political power to integrate the syndicalist states yet. As we arrived to the eastern border, the communists still hadn't destroyed the Reclamation Authority. So we decided to try and seize some of their territory. We declared war and managed to capture a single city. Seeing no way to win the war, they surrendered, but they only signed peace with the communists and we got nothing at all. At least we can start to integrate the syndicalists now. The last battle is here. While our industry is stronger than theirs, we have about the same army and air force size. The only worrying part is their medium tanks and Soviet support. So let's begin the war right now. We decided to begin our first offensive in Dakota. Our goal was to reach the Missouri River. They were stronger than the syndicalists, but we still managed to advance. We thought about trying to encircle them, but since we could reach our objective without it, we decided not to take the risk of our own troops getting encircled by a counterattack. Soon we had reached the river in the south and began to turn north to push along the Canadian border. This too went well, but we failed to encircle 3 of their divisions. If we managed to capture Kansas now, we would have a great opportunity to encircle a ton of their troops. At first, everything went smoothly, but the more we progressed, the fiercer their defense became. It wasn't helped by the cold and snowy weather. Still, we managed to capture Manhattan, allowing us to advance towards Wichita, the biggest city in Kansas. In the south of the city, they had tried to push into Oklahoma with their tanks, but they had only bashed their heads against our shields. With their tanks low organized, we could easily counterattack them and cut the only railway into Wichita. We decided to immediately assault the city, and after only a short fight, they retreated. With Wichita captured, we could begin to move north, but we were wrong. In Dakota, we had far too little supply, and the only way to get more is to capture Omaha. We tried to cross the river, but with 3 divisions defending the city we failed. At the same time, they were crossing the Missouri River and succeeded. But this allowed us to cross it too, and from 5 different tiles we tried again to capture the city and managed this time. So, with supply back, we can encircle their divisions and begin to push them to the Rocky Mountains. We have now arrived to the Rocky Mountains. While we have destroyed most elite divisions of theirs, they have deployed several guerrilla militias with the goal of holding the mountains until the last man. We too have expanded our military, but we can't send them to the front due to our limited supply. Instead, we sent them to Mexico, who has occupied New Mexico and southern Texas. So we declared war on the Mexicans in the goal of liberating these 2 territories and opening a bigger front with the communists. We decided to try and encircle their Texan holdings, but after we broke through, they had created a defense in depth and started to counterattack us. After only a week of fighting, we were forced to retreat back. Instead, we tried to encircle New Mexico. We were so close to do it, but they managed to save it and stop us. At the same time, the Mexicans had started capturing our territory, and fighting outside of Houston had also begun. Reinforcements had already been called from the Communist front, and soon another 7 divisions arrived to the area and we began a counterattack. We broke through once again, and with no Mexican defense in depth, we managed to drive all the way to the Mexican Gulf and encircle more than 15 divisions. A huge disaster for the Mexicans. The war has turned and all of Texas is liberated. At the same time, we tried to encircle New Mexico once again. It took a long time since they had a tank division defending the tile, but once we captured it, the Mexicans were encircled since they didn't have any military access with the communists. We killed and captured their troops, summing up their total casualties to more than half of their starting army. Not wanting to sacrifice any more Mexican men, the Mexican government asked for peace, and since we have to kill the communists, we accepted. They renounced their claims on southern Texas and New Mexico while we gave them back our prisoners of war. Our whole army can now turn back to the communists. The West Coast will soon be ours. The communists have surrendered. All American states are under our control. We will immediately start to integrate them, which will take a long time, especially since we have to destroy the communist ideology on the West Coast. But still, 50 days later, we announced the United States of America united again, and with our country united, the Canadians reached out to us in the hopes of friendly relations. We demanded Hawaii and Alaska in return of us joining the Democratic League. They agreed and we joined the Canadian faction. The USA is back on the world stage, stronger than ever. Washington would be proud. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.